Hi everyone. Today the SSSVEDA question of the day is which social network do you love the most? So, well, I think the answer is kind of complicated, but in order to be a social network, I think it has to be extremely social. It has to be accessible to everyone. Otherwise, what do you call a network where no one can access it, right? I mean, that'd be an antisocial network. So it's really important that you're able to access it. This means just a wide variety of different devices. So if you have just a feature phone that does texting, or just a computer, or just pretty much anything, it's got to have an API so that you can actually write your own applications. So that to me is that's a social network right there. So that really eliminates a lot of things like Snapchat. I mean, Snapchat doesn't work on a lot of Windows devices. I mean, there are a lot of Windows devices in the world. Google Plus, I've used that a little bit. It's all right. It's kind of weird. I just there's not an app available for my device, and because I use a Lumia 950 XL Windows phone. I've used Windows phones for years and years, and I'm a Windows phone developer, so I'm going to use the phones I develop apps for, and I don't really care what everyone else uses, but Google doesn't like to play nice with Windows phones, so they don't make an app. Facebook, it's just kind of heavy and bloated, and I really like the character limit on Twitter because it makes people be succinct, short, sweet, to the point, unlike my vlogs. Some of them are short. But yeah, and a lot of that, I really think, I've heard people say, oh, I don't like Twitter because you can't debate someone on it. Well, first of all, most of what happens on the internet isn't really debate. It's just a bunch of blathering. And I really think if more people debated people on Twitter, then I think the debate would go further, because you only have a couple characters to get your thoughts out. It really keeps you on task in theory. So I think it's an ideal platform for trying to persuade someone of your perspective, because you have to do it so succinctly and so clearly that hopefully even a child could understand it if you're doing it right. Now, that doesn't mean that just because you're succinct, your idea is dumb, it sucks. That's not really an argument, but it's short. So anyway, I think there's a certain elegance in the brevity. Now, I try and explain Twitter to people sometimes, because to me, it's like one of these things I don't understand. It's like, okay, so Twitter, in order to use it, you don't actually have to have a Twitter account. You can just go to search.twitter.com, and you can search for all kinds of stuff. Like, if I hear of breaking news or something, then I'll go and I'll use a Twitter location search on where the news is breaking, and I'll be getting like live pictures from the scene from all kinds of people who are witnessing it. When I heard about Sully Sullenberger's plane crashing in the Hudson River, I heard the news, and there was all this, this is a couple years back, and the news media was like, a plane has gone down in the Hudson and no one knows anything. Well, that was bullshit, because all you had to do is go to Twitter search and you could see people standing on the wings, and that doesn't mean that there are no fatalities or injuries, but it means it's not a complete loss like a lot of crashes are. So it was something really cool happened there. When the Boston bombers were being hunted down by SWAT teams, I mean, you're not getting the true story from the mainstream media for a variety of reasons. I mean, I have people who work in the media, and they tell me that essentially, even though we have freedom of the press and everything, if you want access to the crime scenes, then you're going to do what the police want you to do with regard to covering things. So it's so much to that extent that in my city, the news cameramen let the police know, apparently, that they're about to start rolling so that they can get their hats on, because they're supposed to wear their hats in uniform. So they give a heads up. They're like, hey, we're going to start rolling. Better get your hats on. I don't know exactly how they say it, but that's the communication. And there have been apparently news teams who didn't give that warning, and they, for some period of time, were way back cordoned off, where they couldn't get a shot of the guy being wheeled out in the body bag or whatever, that's the shot that the news wants. So the news complies with the police and everyone else, so that they can get exclusive stories and all this kind of stuff. And Twitter, you don't have that. You can take a picture, you can get it up there on Twitter, you can take a short video. And one of the things I love most about Twitter is, like, the early social networks, all throughout the 70s and 80s, and even popular today, is you've got CB radio and some of these things that just anyone can get on and broadcast on. But Twitter is really the CB radio for the whole world, because it knows no boundaries. Any phone that supports SMS, or any computing device, or even Internet of Things devices can connect to Twitter's APIs and send messages, send photos. They can do it automatically. It's just amazing how many things can provide content to Twitter. But then, in order to organize it, you can search for things locally, or you can also search for things based on keywords or hashtags that are kind of like channels. So pretty much you can spontaneously have channels form around certain events. And to me, that kind of capability is just incredible, because suddenly you can, it's like an instant and dynamic social network that can spontaneously form around any kind of event at any time, any day or night. It could be for fun, it could be for a serious emergency need. I mean, I really think it's hard to beat Twitter. The one thing that kind of drives me crazy about Twitter, though, and I haven't seen this as much lately, but the nice thing about Twitter is that you can actually go and search for things, as I mentioned before. So if you have an area of interest, you can go and look it up. You can look up a hobby, you can see what people are saying about it, you can see what people are saying about it in your neighborhood. But sometimes when you find people who have a common interest or whatever, and you find two friends or whatever on Twitter who are having a conversation back and forth, if you butt in, sometimes they act like, how dare you intrude in my private conversation or chat? I mean, to me, Twitter is like walking down the street having a conversation with someone, and if you're out in public and you say something and someone else wants to chime in with their opinion, then that's par for the course for talking in public. If you want to go have a private conversation, go get on some private IM's network, or exchange private messages or direct messages on Twitter. But yeah, it seems, like I said, if people are having a public conversation and they get all upset because someone else joined in, especially if sometimes these conversations might happen months, weeks. I mean, the Twitter stuff is archived for forever. So you might have someone who searched on a topic at a time and a location, and they chime in a long time later, and people just get all bent out of shape about it. And to me, that's an anti-social network, not a social network. So I really think, though, that overall, Twitter really just hits all of the checkpoints there. It's available on so many different devices. It's really easy to use. Even if you don't have an account, you can still benefit from it through the search. And one last thing about Twitter that I think is really cool is, like, a lot of social media networks or means of communication, the other person has to have an account. If I have something to say to some famous person, I don't have to find out who their handler is or say about some famous person or whatever. I can just say it. In fact, there's a famous soccer player, and they call it football, but there's a famous soccer player who shares my name. He's in the UK. And it's really funny because I can always tell when he's playing soccer, especially when he's playing badly, because all kinds of weird people in England start like giving me advice about how to play soccer, which I don't do. I don't really care about soccer in the slightest. But it's hilarious to me that they're, to me, that's a worthwhile appropriation of using my Twitter account. I would hope that every now and again that famous soccer player looks at what people are trying to say at him. And I'd hope that they eventually figure out that he really does have a Twitter account of his own, and if they just memorize it, then they can maybe talk more directly to him. So anyway, I love Twitter. I've been on it for a while. I started to get on it because friends in the tech community and at a job I was working on, they kind of had I was working in consulting, and so they were at all these different clients, and Twitter was a way where on our mobiles we could kind of stay in touch with each other and kind of have some kind of sense of community even though we were far apart. And I think in many ways, there are better applications for doing that. A lot of people like Slack. I like Skype for that kind of thing. But really, when it comes to the one-size-fits-all thing, the one social media account that everyone should have, or at the very least use through the Twitter search or even search integrations with their favorite search engine, Twitter's really the tough one to beat. And it's kind of amazing to me that it hasn't done as well financially as some of its competitors, but hopefully it's in there for the long haul, and I think it's fine the way it is. It doesn't need a lot of enhancements or changes, so that's it. So anyway, if you disagree, let me know. I'd love to see about it in the comments, and be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. That's it. Bye.